Hi, my name is Jeff Simmons. I'm the Associate Superintendent of Operations for the Buckeye Union High School District. Wanted to give you a brief presentation today of what our first meeting was with the community regarding our bond election. And so wanted to walk through this presentation summary with you to give you more information about, factual information about the upcoming bond. So we had this meeting on February 21st of this past spring, and went over some enrollment projections for the 24-25 school year that's getting ready to start. So on this left side of the screen is what last year's 23-24 school year looked like. Usually October 31st is our pretty good number that we kind of finish the school years with. So that was 55-27 between all of our schools. On the right, we have projections for this upcoming school year based on our numbers over the past decade or so, with a minimum growth of students, a maximum growth of students, and what an average typically is. And most of the time we fall in this average range. So when we do the district models, and we're looking at somewhere between 150 and 160 new students coming from 23-24 to 24-25. And then we also have two independent enrollment tracking systems. We have a demographer, Applied Economics, who does numbers for our district. And then also the Division of School Facilities uses ASU as their demographer to project for new school facilities as well. So two outside agencies also looking at our numbers. And so the district demographer has run the numbers through based on housing starts and people moving to the community and the projections that they have from the city of Goodyear and the city of Buckeye. And they're projecting a high school and opening in the fall of 28, the next school. The Division of School Facilities, who uses ASU, is projecting a high school opening in fiscal year 27, the fall of 27. So they're pretty close together and also validate our numbers from the district. All three numbers are fairly close. So just some history, public school district boundaries most of them were developed in the early 1900s prior to some of the cities and municipality boundaries being drawn. And that's why you'll see a number of school districts that kind of crawl into multiple cities. Ours were established in 1921 is when the district came about. And we include Buckeye, Goodyear, and Maricopa County Islands across the way. Arizona is different from many other states as they have an elementary K-8 system, a union system, which is like Buckeye Union 9th through 12th grade. And then we also have districts that are unified that are K through 12, and they're also here in the Valley. And so there's a combination of all those things, and that's kind of the way they were set up initially. Our district services about 5,500 students, 9th through 12th grade. We have 4 feeder elementaries, Buckeye Elementary, Liberty, Palo Verde, and Arlington. And why aren't we unified? The community did have a vote back in 2008, and they voted no to unification. They wanted the districts to have independent control and local control, and so they voted that down. State funding formulas for maintenance and operations, and that's not just maintenance, it's all of our salaries, benefits, all of our supplies, utilities, everything you can think of pretty much in running a day-to-day school district operation falls in that number. So we get about $6,300 per student there. And then what they call district additional assistance, which is capital, we get about $686 per student to purchase equipment. Voter authorized funding, there is a maintenance and operations override in effect. It passed in November of 22. It's for 5 years of full funding that began in school year 23-24 for 10% above the state formula. So basically the state number that we were talking about up here, the district is allowed, if the voters approve it, to exceed their budget to provide for students at 10% above the state formula. And then district additional assistance or capital. There is a capital override out there that some districts have. Our district has never had one of those for the tax implications of what that would mean and higher taxes. So we have not done those, but we do have some bonds in place, and the last one passed in 2014. So a bond election in 14, as I mentioned, passed for $49 million. It provided laptops, tablets for students, classroom additions at each school, several renovations, and buses to transport our students. School number 4 was scratched at that time. the community did not want to pursue school number 4, didn't feel it was that close to happening, and wanted that removed from the bond program. So we did, and that passed by 290 votes and has been in place. In 2020, the district attempted to do an election for $87 million, laptops and tablets for students, classroom additions at each school, renovation, and buses, and that lost by about 8,000 votes. That was during the COVID pandemic time. Very hard to get out in front of people and explain what we were trying to do, and the community was not ready to support that. So why now? Well, our student laptop and tablet program cannot continue without bond funds. That was voted in 2014. It was a 10-year program, and that's expiring. So we would have to use our existing laptops that would be 5 and 6 years old to continue for our students if we do not pass this election. Safety and security items, which you'll see here, security cameras and other things to help our campuses. Managing enrollment growth that we can see is coming from the independent demographers and from our own internal numbers. Maintaining and renovating facilities, and then buses for our students as we drive a lot of miles every year. It's a very gigantic district, and you can see here in the picture, so we go basically from Avondale Boulevard to 599th Avenue east to west, and then also from McDowell and most areas up to Northern there on the far side up here, on the far west side. And so this is a 1,200 square mile district. It's fairly massive. And most of the development is centralized in this area right now. And growth is coming in these other directions along the I-10 corridor here. We're projected to have 12 to 15 high schools that build out. We have 3 currently. Securing land for the next 2 schools right now near West Park area in the west part of Buckeye, and near Blue Horizons and Las Brisas there between the Buckeye and Goodyear border there on the northeast side of the district. Construction and equipment costs are soaring. The new 2,400 student high schools are coming in between $150 and $200 million. There's been a couple that have recently been bid in other districts, and those are the numbers that are coming back. So it's a very high cost to try to get a high school built. And then we're working with the Division of School Facilities to assist with land and construction costs. And a lot of questions we get is, isn't the state supposed to build new schools for our community? And yes, but what does that Division of School Facilities school look like with minimum standards, the timeliness of when it gets funded and when it opens? And the traditional high school experience is there. They do not fund any of the gyms or performing arts centers or any of those things. So to give the traditional high school experience, we have to go to our community and bond for those things. So how are other high schools and unified districts handling new high school facilities? Several in the East Valley, if your property tax base is high enough, then you just go out and build your own schools with B-bonds through your community. It's not a huge tax rate increase for residential homeowners, because there's so much commercial tax base in those communities to help absorb some of those costs. And but we're not in that situation here. It's a lot of bedroom community. There's industry coming, but it's not here yet. And so we will work with the Division of School Facilities to provide funding for our new school construction. And basically that comes in at about 50% right now. And that was the same even back in 2007 when we built Yonker High School. We got about 50% of the money from the state, and the other 50% came from the community in the bond program. So classroom space basically gets funded, but there's no funding, as I mentioned, for gyms, performing arts centers, or ball fields. That all has to come from the local community. So here's an idea of each campus. This is Buckeye Union. The red is bond funded through the community, and the green was SFB funded. This was a replacement high school that was done back in the late 90s, early 2000s. To replace Buckeye Union High School. Then Estrella Foothills, you can see kind of the same thing where it's the instructional space is covered, but any of the auxiliary type activities or space is not covered and was picked up by bond funding. And then Yonker High School, you can see the classroom buildings also again, and then the red buildings were also provided by the community through the bond program. And then our Learning Center campus, which we'll talk about here in a couple of minutes in one of the slides, but all of that was done B-bond, even though we're servicing students there. We built that completely with B-bond funds. and we'll explain a little bit more about that. So here's the Division of School Facilities capacity. Here's what they show we should be able to house at each high school. They're saying with the space that we have, we should put 2,800 students on the Yonkers campus and 1,800 students on the Estrella campus. And you can see what our current enrollment is. Why this is a 0 is these kids that attend the Learning Center are actually part of these numbers here. They have a home school where they're enrolled in based on their boundary, but they go there for services, mainly special needs, but we also have an alternative campus there for students that want a different type educational experience than the traditional one on their home campus. So you can see the disparity of where we're at and where we need space. So why is the Division of School Facilities showing us about 1,500 students away from a new school? Because facilities were built with local B bonds. So the rules are with the state is only 25% of the space that's built with B bonds is considered invisible to the state. So basically the state is taking credit for 75% of all of the construction we've done for building space. They're taking credit for that against their formulas. So they're saying they don't have to fund those. So the fairness of the statute has always been a question. Bonds are not the state's money, and funding of a minimum adequacy, and it takes the needs of the students and the programs out of the equation. So we work with them, but we have trouble with these formulas and trying to get new schools completed. So here's just a kind of a quick look in the green. This is a very complex chart, but basically in the green, this is all the space that the state is saying that they'll recognize right now. So we have 213,000 square feet that the state is taking credit for right here. And you can see a number of these things are not instructional space, but they are counting that against us and saying that we don't need facilities. You need to put students in all of these spaces and deal with it that way. So very difficult to put classrooms in a performing arts center and in a gymnasium. Those are obviously gyms and performing arts centers. So we are trying to work through some of those formula limitations. So like I said, some of those spaces are not even classroom space, which we kind of covered. And then the Learning Center is mostly special needs classrooms and alternative education computer labs. So we have some very specialized programs for special needs students that don't have to travel into Phoenix now for services. We can actually service them in that facility on Verrado and I-10 right here in Buckeye and keep our students close to their homes. So the next meeting we were setting up for February 28th, which we had, and that'll be in the next presentation. But in that meeting, we're going to talk about the Prudential project list, the bond tax rates that are associated with the list options, and then prepare for our final meeting March 13th for the community to make a recommendation to the governing board of whether to have the election. So thanks for watching.